What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today I'm tackling The Invisible Raptor, which is being distributed by Wellgo Entertainment. It was provided for my consideration, a screening for my consideration, which I appreciate. Wellgo. I've reviewed something of theirs before. It did not have audio description. We've had a little bit of a conversation. I sent them some information about audio description, perhaps for future releases. I didn't expect them to immediately jump on it, or the next thing that I watch from them to have it. So, but perhaps at some venture, Wellgo will figure out if there are movies to add with audio description. The weird thing is they also distributed Sting, which I actually have seen with audio description. So, yeah, this is a horror comedy. It's very, very referential into Jurassic Park, heavily referential into Jurassic. This is made by some guys who really loved Jurassic Park growing up and have drifted into the horror elements and came up with a question of, can you make a dinosaur movie without a dinosaur? And yes, you can. So if the raptor is invisible, that's the gimmick, which feels kind of hokey. It feels like kind of like what the Asylum was doing for years. Megalodon versus Sharktopus. The fuck. Anyway, um, so it feels like one of those gimmicky Asylum-based movies, but it's already sort of like more entertaining than that. If anything, this would be on like the high end, like the Sharknado end of it. Like watching the first Sharknado, which is one of the reasons why there are like five of them, is because it was actually sort of like a lark that film was as entertaining as it was. Invisible Raptor may have a low budget charm to it, and also at the same time, if somebody told me that the graphics looked like they were made by a teenager messing around with Adobe in his basement, I would believe you. It has that kind of vibe to it, even though I can't see. So it's like, and I didn't have audio description, so I'm just like, yeah, I would buy that, you know. If it looks like the plane crash at the end of Air Force One, yeah, I would, sure. Um, but uh, it, it has a charm and a humor to it, and it absolutely knows what it's talking about and what it's doing, and leans into the Jurassic Park references. Um, it's got our lead character. His name is Grant, and he's a paleontologist. But like his last name is something else, but his first name is Grant. So instead of being Dr. Grant, like Sam Neill, Alan Grant, he's Dr. Grant, I don't know, something else. Um, and he used to work for an organization, and he keeps talking about how this bitter end happened. And luckily, his knowledge is required. He works at like a dino theme park again, while they don't have real dinosaurs. Jurassic Park. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's very Jurassic Parkian to have Dr. Grant working at a dino theme park. And he meets with these little kids at the beginning, and he does the Raptor thing with the claw that he does in the movie, where he's like, you could slice you know. Um, he makes that sort of one of those scenes, but it seems to like horrify the kids a lot more than it did terrify that first kid in the original Jurassic Park movie. So it's not a spoof of Jurassic Park. Like, it doesn't go beat for beat against Jurassic Park. It just is very self-referential to that. They have a they live in like Spielbergia or something like that is the name of their town. Um, some of the jokes are really goofy, but some of them are really fun too. Like, after shit starts happening, literal shit starts happening, um, the uh, Grant and his friend, who I don't even know how to describe it. Imagine 2024 Pauly Shore, uh, following this guy around. I don't just I don't know, he just feels like whatever, sort of like random, like, "What? Oh man, that sucks." Like whatever guy that dude is, that's popular right now. Um, so they go to the thing, and that other guy's like the security guard, and one of the one of the great like little jokes that I liked in this, one of the things that I'm bothering to even review a film that didn't have audio description, that's a horror movie by the way, is there's a scene where they go into the police department, and obviously the cops don't like this guy, and they're like, "Ah, I see you're gonna try to apply uselessly apply again to be a police officer," and he's like, "You know what, while I'm here, why not?" It's just like he's too stupid to realize like what they just like they threw a dig at him, like, "Ah, we're never gonna pick you, are you here again to uselessly apply?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." It's like, okay. So some of the other jokes are just uh cheesy, hokey, over the top. There's like a mom whose kid is eaten, and then there's like a pile of shit with like her son's retainer, and that's how she knows it's her son's. She's like, "Oh my god, it's my son's retainer," and I always used to yell about it. I'd be like, "You're a pile of shit," and now he's a literal pile of shit. I probably shouldn't say that on television. And I was like, I hate this, but at the same time, um, so the thing about comedy is it's broad, and not every joke is going to land for everybody, and oftentimes the comedies that are hits that are the most resonant are really just the ones that had the most jokes land with the broadest audience, you know? A lot of like cult comedies and stuff like that, they really sort of have, uh, you can have it really work for 10% of the population. And that 10% will go on to talk about it forever and ever, and then nobody else will ever get that movie. And those are usually called like cult classics for a reason. Sometimes they expand, and sometimes it's like people get sort of gaslit into believing they really like the movie and understand it, or it becomes a movie that ages better with time, that didn't work in its time, but works for some reason 30 years later. Something like this is going to work for people who like horror comedies, people who were really into Jurassic Park, people who get the little other references along the way to other movies of its ilk, other Jurassic-esque movies. I was waiting for like a Theodore Rex joke. I wanted that. I wanted maybe the Velociraptor to have to team up with a cop. That would have been great. Um, but and then I love dinosaurs enough to say openly and admit to you, I've seen Theodore Rex. I am one who has seen it. Anyway, um, but yeah, this just needs audio description. At the end of the day, it's a horror comedy. So if I was to recommend this to blind and low vision people, I would say it needs audio description. I mean, horror movies just don't work without audio description because we don't know what's happening. So like it's just a lot of sound effects, and it sounds like somebody's being eaten, or it sounds gory, but we don't know how gory it is. Um, but it has sort of that low budget comedy charm to it where I was kind of enjoying it. Same sort of thing. Not exactly the same thing, but I kind of had the same charm out of this year's The People's Joker, where I felt like there's no money in this movie, but when you get people who are talented crafting a movie like that, you can feel elements of it working. You can feel like a lot of it coming through. And Vera Drew is definitely like the driving force behind The People's Joker, which is why that film, even though it feels like it was made for $20, works because of just such a unique voice and driving behind the film. And Invisible Raptor has that too, where there's the guy who writes and stars in this, and he's good. Um, it's a unique enough plot, and it just kind of it'll push you forward through it, like you know, like the jokes and the gags, and even though there are parts of it where I was like, I don't know what's happening, at the same time, I still wanted to say, I think this is worth. If you're sighted and you love Jurassic Park and Zeitgags, and go out and check this out. And if not, see if it ever picks up audio description somewhere. Whether or not Wellgo ever does it or not, Amazon just randomly puts text-to-speech audio description on titles all the time. I'm constantly seeing the list that they're releasing, and I'm like, is there any rhyme or reason to the titles you've selected. Because I feel like they have classic films on there that people actually want to see, and then they just pick like the most random titles. I'm like, who's asking for that? Did somebody request this random movie that I've never heard of before? you know? But yeah, they just put, and then they'll put TTS on Sound of Freedom. I mean, it doesn't really matter. They'll put it on whatever they feel like putting it on their service. So Invisible Raptor may not have audio description now, but 5 years from now, it could have text to speech on Amazon, and then you find it and you remember, hey, didn't John say that movie was maybe watchable? Yeah, it probably is. So I can't fully grade this, but I would lean positive. But as far as like where on the scale, with something that says this can't be this hokey, and relies so heavily on the horror element and gore, I would feel comfortable anything other than saying I'm leaning positive on this. So if you're asking me thumbs up, thumbs down, recommend, not recommend, I would recommend it. But I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who is blind or low vision, because it's gonna be really frustrating for you to not be able to follow the main elements of the film. Like, I'm willing to throw myself constantly on a sword so I can have these kind of conversations. So just because I do it doesn't necessarily mean this is very much like a do as I say, not as I do thing. I constantly am doing this so that you don't have to, so that I have a video of me watching RRR without audio description. It's in like what is it, like a Hindi movie? I sat through Amelia Perez spoke. It's in a language I haven't seen. I sat through No Other Land. This is in a language I don't speak. So, I do this for a purpose, to talk about accessibility and why we need it. So, and how it should just become like second thought and just make it happen. So, would I love for Wellgo to do that? Yeah, sure. And they do have titles that are worth watching. They're not The Asylum. So, to where I really don't care. I'm very much like a describe everything, but like Asylum movies rank to me as like the last thing. They're in like the last percentage. They're like, well, we're at 97%. What are we missing? We haven't described the Asylum movies yet. And it's like, all right, well, I guess we can finally describe them. Just like, which is interesting because the Sharknado franchise does have text-to-speech audio description available for it, and some of the titles that are now on Tubi also have, like Shark Side of the Moon, have audio description. Anyway, so even The Asylum is dipping into audio description. Good God, help us all. But if you have a chance to see this, and you could do worse. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.